Good afternoon and welcome to the CERIAS Weekly Security Seminar at Purdue University. Before we get started, just want to let everybody know that if you'd like to submit a question, you can do so using the Q&A button. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today. Dr. Marina Gavrilova is a professor of computer science at the University of Calgary. Her research interests include machine intelligence, biometric recognition, image processing, and GIS. Today, she'll be speaking to us about new developments in biometric security and ethics. Marina, thank you so much for being with us today. Please take it away.
Thank you so much, Mike, and welcome everybody to this seminar. Let me share my screen. Here you go. I hope you can see.
Yep, we got it.
Yeah,
thanks.
You got it. Excellent. All right. So it was my pleasure to present at the CERIAS Center 13 years ago. And at that time, I spoke about biometric information security and multi-model system design. Well, things changed quite a bit. And today I'm going to talk about privacy, security, ethics as applicable to both biometrics as well as artificial intelligence supported decision making. So I lead Biometric Technologies Lab and Sparks Lab at the University of Calgary. And in today's talk, after brief introduction, I will discuss information fusion and new mechanisms to design intelligent decision-making systems for biometric as well as medical applications. And I will give a couple of case studies, examples on privacy and ethics considerations. So you can see the scope of my research from this slide. So it ranges from the International Journal of Digital Human that I just started to lead as editor-in-chief, to transactions on computational sciences that I'm with Springer, that I have been editor-in-chief for the past 15 years, to applications to cyber war, cybersecurity, intelligent decision-making, and more recently, trustworthy computing. Just as an introduction for this lecture topic, biometrics is defined as domain of research that studies psychological and behavioral human characteristics. And of course, there's a number of applications that are most commonly known to majority of public that are related to border security, banking, finance, medical application, robotics, risk prediction, and access control, as well as some of the consumer devices such as iPhones that rely on biometric face, voice, or fingerprint identification to allow user in. You can see on the screen the variety of different biometric modalities. Within the Biometric Technologies Lab, over past 10 years, we slowly migrated from looking at individual biometrics and information fusion to investigating novel architectures that can help to identify most prominent features that we would like to extract from biometric data in order to make our decision about person identity or person gender or access level to specific user of the system most trustworthy, most reliable, most accurate, as well as to make those systems lightweight and requiring little resources, quick training time, and even in performing the proper work, even in the presence of low quality data, so mitigating for some risks associated with low quality absent data or not precise decision making. And within this domain of scope, we also slowly migrated toward considering personality aspects of a human as well as the emotions within this realm as one of the biometric traits of a person. So we're not only focusing on physiological or behavioral characteristics expressed through typing patterns, signature, even presence online, but we're looking at behavioral biometrics in the way how humans communicate and how human to human communication evolves, also how human to machine and human to robot communication evolves. And within this domain, we're quite interested in improving the experience of end user in terms of not only knowing the decisions made by our systems are accurate, and precise and trustworthy, but also understanding that this decision communicated in a explainable way, that decisions were made fair, that the data training that they used was, and the data collection was performed with the consideration for privacy of the user, and that finally emotional aspects of a human communicating with the system taken into account. So we have emotionally aware robots or emotionally aware systems to increase and improve users' overall experience. And that's essentially what we're working on right now, including a specific focus on privacy ethics, bias, and trustworthy implications. This is Calgary, this is where I work. And last year, well, actually 2 years ago during the pandemic, we had a big exhibition called Data Burst, at which our lab presented the work, The Epoch of Biometrics and Digital Identity. You can see us as a center that generates the data in this diagram co-created with an artist from our university as well, Vivian Smith. And you can say that digital identity, social media, artificial intelligence, our emotions, algorithms, and biometrics, all part of this social circle, social spheres within which each of us contributes the data and which each of us ends up using as a data. And each of us actually depends on this data when we receive services in bank or cross the border. So it became very entangled, very connected, all these notions. And that's therefore research that we do is very practical, very human operated, user-oriented experience, which also looks at global issues such as global trustworthiness of AI or fairness of AI, or equity, diversity, and inclusion issues and consideration as part of data collection. Just as a brief side note, it will also look and contribute to United Nations Sustainable Goals, such one of those goals on safety and security of people within the domain of cyber wars and cybersecurity was listed as a top used publication of Springer that concerns UN Sustainable Development Goals that are important for societies. And we also contribute to international efforts to promote awareness of risks, potential risks, and also future directions related to artificial intelligence development and biometric surveillance developments. And thus we contribute last year to Japanese government report on AI technology, and this year to Geneva Science and Diplomacy Summit that was looking at the views of AI international experts on what are the changes that come in towards global societies in the very near future and over the next 5-10 years with the huge development of AI-powered technologies such as ChatGPT, sentient AI, potentially emergence of sentient AI, and emergence of conglomerate, larger systems of AI-connected agents in terms of sustainability, inclusivity, responsiveness, and safety of us humans within this new world and new societies. A number of examples that we do, or number of projects that we do within the framework of Biometric Security Lab, as you can see, look at both security and privacy aspects. So from the point of view of security, we would like to make our remote authentication as accurate as possible. And here are examples of remote authentication by gate, by voice, by online profiles. And then we also would like to detect abnormal network activity. We would like to identify fake online profiles or illegal network activities. We would like to be able to identify fake news or to perform authorship disambiguation on a larger online social websites. And we have a number of projects, including colleagues and collaborators from Purdue University as well, that allow us to attain those goals and lead those projects. And on the other side, on the number of medical smart sensor-based projects, as well as societal and human behavioral projects, we look at potentially suicide prevention, drop-in center, biometric check-in. We look at issues of ethical use of AI. We look at issues of women retention in IT sector, fall preventions in smart homes for seniors, detecting personal distress in the airport or public place, and physical rehabilitation using our biometric multimodal gait recognition model for physical and mental well-being. And in all of those projects, we have to consider privacy of users as one of the key considerations. Just as a sum of the examples to illustrate the previous concepts in interactions with smart technology, smart devices, sensors such as companion robot Zenbo or social robot Jibo, smartphones or Google Home. Our researcher actually, some of the applications of our previous research that I outlined helps to inform those applications and make sure they're accurate, that the communication and devices possess abilities to perform situation awareness and deliver personalized services. In terms of the gait recognition, here's just a quick illustration of different sensors and information that we receive from infrared, depth stream, stream gray, depth stream colorful, and skeleton in 3D in order to perform remote gait identification studies, as well as to inform physical rehabilitation in the context of medical research. And we also performed similar studies on virtual agents, including remote virtual games environment and identification of avatar behavior and risks assessment for online communications and networks, as well as performed research on author sentiment and psychological traits recognition in online social networks as well. So here is just a brief introduction of some of the main methodologies that we developed while doing all of this research. Information fusion is defined as a process of arriving at a decision based on more than one expert modalities, metric or an evidence. And here as expert, we can use basic classical machine learning methods, semi-automated learning, as well as deep learning, fully supervised deep learning, including news transformer models, LSTM network structures, and graph-based neural networks, and other new development that essentially almost transformed the way how we do research in a lot of different domains over the last 2-3 years. And here is an example of some of those systems that I described before. So we have user registration on the first row. From data capturing module, we can collect the data. Using sensors, we can also collect this data using online information and communication. Then we have processing module and extract biometric features, store them in the storage module. For verification, we capture a new image of a person, extract features, and we try to perform matching using a variety of matching algorithms based on machine learning and deep learning in order to say whether the identity can be found, and then also sometimes provide the ranked list of people with those identities, and sometimes also provide probability of each person having this particular identity. And for multimodal biometric system, we do exactly the same, but we do it with multiple traits, and therefore we need to add an extra module. This module is called information fusion module, as you can see on diagram B. And within the framework of this module, we perform and apply a variety of different algorithms, from probabilistic fuzzy systems and Markov chains to classical logics and algebraic-based decision-making in order to come up to the decisions that now will combine information coming from multiple sensors. Just as illustration, we can have multi-instance biometrics where we look at right and left eye. We can have multi-sample biometrics when we have different views of the face, left frontal or right. We can have fingerprint, face, and iris, which is true multimodal biometric, and also apply different algorithms to perform information fusion using those multiple modalities. And this diagram just shows that there are multiple levels at which we can consider fusion. If we now look at this diagram left to right, and if we look at the vertical structure of the data, the leftmost sensor level fusion means that we combine information at sensor level. So if we have an image of the face, image of the fingerprint, we will combine it together, create a common image, and then perform feature extraction and identity recognition based on it. As we move forward, left to right, the second column in this image, in this diagram, shows a feature level fusion. And feature level fusion means that we extract features from the face, let's say geometrical features. We can extract using DTW the structure, the texture of the face and the skin. We can also extract minutia points from the fingerprints and combine those features together and then run it through the matching module that I described on the previous slides. And then what we see in the right of this diagram, match, score, rank level, and decision level fusion. The fusion methods that actually allow us to run independent matching modules. All of these matching modules or experts will come up with their own decision. So they will do independent data acquisition, feature extraction, and matching processing. And then they will perform as a report, either the percentage of identity match using scores from 0 to 100, or the rank, let's say top 5, top 10 candidates for given identity, or at the very last row, decision module, decision level, they will simply give us 0, 1 as a 1-bit operation, 0 no match found, 1 is correct match. So as we move along this diagram from the left to the right, we can see that the amount of information we fuse becomes less and less, and that the decision making capabilities also become more and more enhanced, because as we have less information, we need to make most accurate decision. So for match rank level fusion, we have to come up with different methods how we can perform and combine the scores, weighted scores, ranking, and modality ranking, etc., etc. And for decision level, we have to come up with even more advanced decision making for those scores in order to, just based on zeros and ones as an outcome, come up with the correct result. And here are examples of those rank level fusion. So they become very sophisticated, higher end border count, Markov chain models, logistic regression, as well as fuzzy fusion become the methods to combine information coming from different sources. Let's say if we just stay for a couple of seconds longer on this diagram, we see multimodal system where we have face, ear, and iris coming as modalities. We can see that each of them during enrollment will extract features using Fisher face or Fisher ear projections. Iris code can be generated differently. Then we will generate 3 separate templates, face, ear, and iris. And then we will send it for identification to the feature matching module. The features will be matched by 3 different experts based on Euclidean distance and Hamming distance in this case. Face ranking will be generated, ear ranking will be generated, iris ranking will be generated. And then we can run multiple fusion algorithms that will combine information coming from different experts and create the final ranking to the best possible way. And the same can be done using fuzzy fusion algorithms as well that we developed in our lab. Another example of unimodal framework is the processing online media data. So it's slightly different because the features we extract now related to linguistic features, stylistic features, knowledge-based features. So we evoke a natural language processing algorithm quite a bit for this research. And then we create a similar profile of the user, except for it's not anymore behavioral physiological. It's now social behavioral profile or communication profile. We store it in the database and we perform training and comparing those vectors of social behavioral features using different new similarity measures that we create in the lab. We were one of the pioneers of this research and coined the term social behavioral biometrics about 10 years ago. And since then, it includes communication of people on Twitter. It includes communication of people using mobile phones, on a social website, in virtual game frameworks and environments, and in other applicable domains. And similarly, as an example of multimodal framework, we asked the question, what happens when we combine social behavioral profiles with physiological biometrics? And we said, yes, we can do that. We can also create this multimodal system that one expert is based on communication, another expert based on our physiological behavior. Of course, the accuracy of user recognition or identifying potential risk or threat becomes extremely high as a result. And within this framework, we can come up with the accurate decision with an accuracy of identity. Let's say if social behavioral biometric maybe guarantee us 80, 85, 90%, we can reach 99% accuracy if we invoke additional information on face or voice or other aspect of the person. So we can see that these are very, very powerful techniques that serve to protect safety of the users and can identify potential risks and threats, or can potentially come up with proper medical diagnosis. But as I mentioned before, they also present certain privacy risks that has to be considered and mitigated at the same time. So how do we know of what we're doing is right? There are standard ways and decision metrics and biometrics to identify whether we are coming up with correct decision. They are probably familiar to majority of you: false acceptance rate, probability of imposter being accepted as a genuine individual, false rejection rate, probability of genuine individual being rejected as an imposter, and genuine acceptance rate and genuine rejection rates, correspondingly fraction of genuine scores exceeding predefined threshold, fraction of imposter scores below predefined threshold. Depending on the application, whether it's highly secure facilities, which require to minimize false acceptance rate, to some consumer-based applications such as access to Disneyland, which can actually have very high false acceptance rate as long as people can access the services. So depending on the range of and the framework within which we use the system, we can set up different thresholds for all of those metrics. And then we can plot them through receiver operating curves and cumulative match characteristics, also computing F1 scores as well, to make sure that our accuracy is correct. And on the left side, we can actually, just as a, once again, nice illustration to what we already discussed, within the domain of social behavioral biometrics, those different characteristics or biometric features could be retweets, replies, close friend network, topics of interest, or their combination. And we can see in this diagram that combination of these features leads to lowest possible equal error rate, so minimizes the error in terms of both false rejection rate or y-axis, false acceptance rate or x-axis. And as a result, system performs the best. This is one of our preliminary researches. So here we had 20%. We now reduced it to below less than 5% an equal error rate with a more powerful combination of features as well as fusion. And on the right, we can also see that when we actually combine build CMC curves, and in this particular research, we did it using cancelability. Cancelability or revocability is one of the domains that I will mention very shortly in one of the subsequent slides. And within this domain, we aim at protecting biometric information by generating the fold that we encrypt And if the information becomes compromised, we can rebuild this fault. So that's why those phase error faults and phase error fault 1 and 2, combining them together results in the best possible correct verification rate, close to 100%. And this is described within these CMC curves. So now let us talk briefly about privacy revocability and cancelability, as well as de-identification. I think this is probably some of the most recent and most interesting research that we lead in the lab. And essentially, as I just identified above, all of the research that we do concerning biometric has to be considerate of privacy of the data, has to be done with obviously proper ethics approval, has to be done in a way that system decision is trustworthy and users' information is protected. So cancelability means extracting biometric template from original data, and this template can be revoked if compromised and rebuilt easily. Because obviously, if your raw data, such as face, stored in some database, which is, I think, normally the case when you cross your border, if somehow it gets compromised or the data gets leaked, then it might be quite difficult to build another system not using the face or using your face because it's been compromised, so accuracy of the identification drops, privacy concerns being raised. So what we would like to do is we would like to make sure, and we did some research using cross-fault validation, we would like to make sure that we can cancel biometric template without compromising original face data that will not be stored on the system. And we've done this research also on the cloud for cloud computing for access and remote services. And the second part is even more interesting. It's called de-identification. So the identification of biometric data means we remove sensitive data from image or a video. Sensitive data, gender, race, age. And we know that right now, artificial intelligence and new transformer methods, new deep learning architectures can easily create deep fakes, can easily extract gender data, can even modify it for any given users. I believe there were news about 6 months ago that Bruce Willis was one of the first actors of Hollywood who gave permission for artificial intelligence system to generate movies using his virtual persona created using AI. So it's becoming only much easier to do. And therefore, we need to make sure that the data that's been stored on data sets or been processed can actually be de-identified in such a way that information shouldn't be extracted or modified or compromised in any way, shouldn't be there. So obviously it's important for privacy, ethics, and consumer rights protection. And here we actually came up with we did an extensive literature review last year and came up with 4 classes for how de-identification works. So complete de-identification refers to a process where biometric modality of a person is entirely de-identified. For instance, we can fully mask it or obscure it. 10 years ago, people used pixelization. Of course, right now we use much more sophisticated image processing techniques to do that. As a result, identity of the person actually cannot be verified, so the biometric of this person cannot be extracted. And applications, so it can be used in mass media, police video footages that are shown to public. So the person identity must be hidden, but they still would like to be true to events happening. So biometric preserving de-identification essentially removes specific biometric features, while the soft biometric remains distinguishable. So the goal of this group of methods, which also majority of them appeared in the last 2-3 years, there was practically no research on the identification prior to that. So the goal is to remove ability to identify a person using given biometric while still retaining soft biometric traits. Neither machine nor human can identify the person, but soft biometric traits remain. So for instance, when we create a video simulation, we can post it on social media. We can say, yeah, there was, people on average, there were children or people on average of the age of 20-25 that were involved in this activity, but their identity remains hidden. Next group is interesting. So in the next group, we call it soft biometric preserving utility retained identification. So within this group, solid biometrics are preserved, traditional biometrics are obscured, and biometric system or computer still will be able to identify an individual, but a human will not be able to. So in this case, we can distort information and remove unique characteristics such as age or gender of a person, but the algorithm still can recognize a person identity using, let's say in this example, the created 3D map below and certain features. And then the last one, traditional biometric preserved identification. In this particular approach, only solid biometrics are obscured while traditional biometric preserved. So in this particular case, for mobile phone access, face recognition-based access, etc., let's say video of the face on individual remains the same, while the height, the hair color, the type of the clothing, etc., will be changed. And that is useful for some type of applications where we don't want to reveal about certain soft biometric features, even potential gender or age, but we would like still to be recognized as humans. So all of those are classified. You can see this classification going left to right. Complete identification, solid biometric preserved identification, solid biometric preserved utility retained identification, and traditional biometric preserved biometric identification. And we also came up with the same classification for multimodal systems as well. Multimodal biometric identification is an upcoming future domain of research. As a flow chart for the identification, we're working right now on face and gait, and age and gender, activity, motion identification. We update and gait sequence, randomize it, and create discriminator deep learning network based on primary biometrics to perform primary biometric identification, but to hide age, gender, activity, or emotion. Another interesting part about it is it's fully flexible and fully customizable, so we can minimize and maximize accuracy of distortion of this auxiliary biometrics. So we can say that, let's say, age, we want to keep a gender, we can completely identify. Alternatively, we can preserve emotion of a person, let's say for some video clips or virtual reality communication, avatar communication, but we can keep the age. So it's a very, very flexible, very adaptive system that allows us to control which features, which biometrics, which traits of the person we can identify and which we cannot. So before I move any further, let me just check on time. 7 more minutes, it's good. Perfect. All right. So in the next few minutes, I will try to summarize and give a couple of case studies on those topics that we discussed in today's lecture. So social behavioral biometrics I already described above. It's a domain of research that we introduced in our lab that can identify individuals based on their communication style expressed on social media. And you can see in this diagram taxonomy of various types of social behavioral biometrics and their applications in sentiment analysis, mental health, opinion mining, aesthetics, and fake news online. So you can see that there are quite a few different applications, large variety of use cases and studies for social behavioral biometrics. And once again, social behavioral biometric flow chart is based on our multimodal system that we created, where in this particular case, after enrollment of, let's say, Twitter data and user IDs in the system, and after running through identification phase, finding top and matching users ID. So we utilizing rank or match level fusion. We can extract tweet-based personality traits, content-based user recognition traits, and graph representation of user social network will result in graph-based psychological trait-aware user identification. This is yet another example of multimodal research. Without going into much details on this case study, we performed this research on image aesthetics for user identification. Essentially, we discovered that even looking at some of the user's favorite images, can identify user with accuracy of about 80 to 95% accuracy and their gender. And this research, once again, is used for cybersecurity, continuous authentication, marketing, as well as recommender systems. So this research, physical biometrics, fingerprint, face on the left, behavior, gait, signature in the middle, social behavior biometrics on the right, and visual aesthetics defined as somebody's taste, preference, or judgment of artwork, music, or website. Research questions whether we can use convolutional neural network to get high recognition performance than traditional machine learning methods were posed. Can it work with a set of preferred images? And would it have more discriminating ability? Those research questions were answered on the data set. So you can see user 15 chooses about a set of 100 or 10 of 5 preferred images. User 19 chooses their own images. And just based on this information alone, which images person likes, we can say identity, we can report identity of the user, or the gender of the user with very high degree of accuracy. This is an example of aesthetic features. If you're interested in it, emotion-based, color-based, as well as intensity of the edges, wavelength, textures, etc., contrast. Here's an outline of the system, users enrolled in the image, and features being extracted. Originally, we used gene expression programming to came up with feature vector, use classical linear SVM to perform classification. User liked images, new liked images come in, see they're different, and based on a set of 1, 3, 5 user liked images, we can actually identify what was original user using one versus many strategies. Here is a brief outline of our genetic-based gene expression programming module. In experimental results, you can see that proposed methods achieve accuracy of 94% user recognition at the rank 1, which means that identity was recognized properly, 99 at rank 5, with 924 features extracted. And those diagrams of SMC curves again, RSC curves, false negative rate versus false positive rate, those metrics that we discussed before, they used again to validate that what we're doing is correct. And then we came up with new deep learning framework, so it's kind of multi-image deep learning structure that uses residual learning-based CNN model for person identification. And within this module, this is how our residual learning block looks like. If you're interested, you can find more information in our papers and publications on how that was designed. And with the result, we can see that from the previous work that I just mentioned, 94% at rank 1, 99% accuracy of user recognition rank 5, the proposed deep learning method achieves 97.73% accuracy at rank 1 and achieves 99% accuracy at rank 5. So from this, the summary is indeed the algorithm become very powerful. We can identify a person just by what images they like, what music they like, what are their preferences, obviously by their social browsing behavior and purchase and behavior, etc., etc. And once again, privacy concerns are very, very important to address within this research. And to address those privacy considerations, we talked a little bit about cancelability, which means when we collect the data, we can actually extract biometric template and change it or revoke it if the data is compromised. For the identification that we discussed before as well, we can remove sensitive data from the image so that artificial intelligence cannot extract it. And for ethics considerations, let's look at the last, I would like to just touch on in the last minute on algorithmic bias. So when we train our data and when we work with data related to the users, the previous two methods, cancelability as well as the identification allow to remove some sensitive information from the data that we're working with. Algorithmic bias and removing or reducing algorithmic bias means that if the training or pre-trained deep learning models or the data that used for training was biased in its core, we would like to minimize the effects on it as it propagates through the system. And within that framework for informed decision making, and we know that more and more artificial intelligence systems now start to make decisions based hiring decisions, policy making decisions, recruitment decision, retention decision, giving person a loan decision. All of this start to impact everyday's life of people within the social and within the media. And the goal is to identify, explain, and mitigate unconscious bias when we use artificial intelligence for decision making. So, of course, there's implications of biased AI systems are significant, and mitigation strategies involve proper data collection, introducing diversity in the data set, introducing protected variables, age, race, gender. When we do the identification, we do exactly that. We remove some of the variables that we don't want to be used in training or analysis of the data. Introducing proxy variables such as place of birth, graduation year, and school name, where a person graduated from, also useful, so we can look at derivatives of the previous protected variables, and we want to make sure we minimize the effect on the final decision as well. Adding additional documentation on how data was collected, using training for people who use it, and using commercially available tools such as Microsoft FairLearn, for instance, to make sure that this consideration of bias and probability of trustworthiness of the system incorporated in the final decision making. All right, so thank you so much for giving me opportunity to discuss my research and discuss some of the issues that we face in the overall society. And there are quite a few open problems and challenges remain. Obviously, how do we work with big data analytics and deep learning? How do we create a framework within which those the goal or the purpose to commercialize technology, the purpose to gain more benefits from certain technologies or algorithms will not overweight privacy risks? How do we create regulations and utilize explainability, ethics, trustworthiness, and prevent bias in a performance decision? And then obviously within this new reality where we use real-time analytics powered by AI from video, sound, social communication, etc., how do we mitigate the impact on processes of interview, hiring, loan decisions, service access decision, etc., and make sure that those decisions are explainable and fair to all different parts of population? And of course, generative AIs and AI singularity is something that majority of people discuss right now as potential challenges of the future that also need to be looked at in right now. Thank you so much for listening to me. And here's information how to get in touch. Thank you. So let me see if I can go to question and answer. I don't see anything yet. And I cannot hear your mic. Now I can. Not yet.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Attendees, go ahead and if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A.
I don't see any yet, and I know we have 5 more minutes, I believe, right? So
yeah, sure.
Well,
and if
we'll give it
a
minute.
Raise their hand. You can also raise your hand if you would like to speak. So I know, this is a very hot topic recently here, especially with all the, things going on in AI. As far as like, checking the source of stuff, like where things come from, or like, I mean, I can see a world where we're just seeing like everything we browse on the internet could be like AI generated, right? And like
Yes.
how to detect whether or not that's been AI generated. These are like things people are talking about today, I guess, right?
Yes. So this is the area that literally practically no research has been happening up to now, because nobody imagined that within the span of 6 months we can generate all this fake content. People talk about fake news generation, but they are human generated, right?
Yes.
But how do we distinguish deep fake face from the real face, right? How do we look at these patterns? We kind of approaching it from this different point of view. We in our lab, we can generate those fakes. We can also compare them to real, right? We can see how we can mitigate, generation of those fake images, fake data, fake information online. But I mean, it's just, it's just this race, right, of between those who develop algorithms to create those generative, right, AI, and create all of this content that might not be verifiable, and those who will find now the features or the trait to be able to distinguish those from what's real, what's not. It's a huge, it's a big thing that's gonna be like, because you can trust almost any news posted right now, right? People can tweet from somebody. There's been already a number of videos posted online and circulated widely, and million people were surprised that person said it, only to appear that it was deepfake that said it.
Right.
Yeah.
I see we have a question here. I'll go ahead and read it. Regarding privacy, what do you think about biometric template projection? I would like to know your thoughts on the traditionally considered aspects, mainly irreversibility, revocability, and renewability, but also the user's consent. And that's from Enrique.
Yeah, great, sure. So that's part of this research that we did on cancelability or revocability of the classical biometric template. From the point of view of users' data, it's still very important, because we still have standalone applications such as face recognition when you cross border, or fingerprint access, of the palm of the hand access to secure a resource. And if the more data we give like that, the more important exactly to have this data stored within the revocable or cancelable biometric template. And then the main aspects would be reversibility, as you said, revocability and renewability of the template as well, because humans, iris doesn't change much, but face changes, the voice changes significantly as well. But I think it's really what Mike asked as a question. Aside from being standalone system, right now we have a tendency of those systems being combined, right? And we have online activity of the person, the face activity. That's what we also investigate and say it's great. It becomes so easy to identify a person. But the point is that if you even protect it within one application is one, how do you protect it in another application? And second is if you can make it revocable renewal in one application, then it now becomes so much easier to generate this fake data based even on the features that you have, right? It's enough just to give those 15 minute, whatever, 20 minutia points, and you can generate a fingerprint which is fairly close to the real one, and then use it to access the data. So I think that just expanding the scope to multiple systems, and this considering this possibility, of this information also being taken away and used to generate new content, this will create even more potential research directions and more algorithms to mitigate this threat. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yes, you're welcome, Enrique. I don't see any more questions in here. And we're about at time here. So Marina, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. It's great to have you, and great to have you again for the second time. And I'm glad that you were able to visit here, and we had pretty good weather here too. So that was pretty nice when you were here a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're always welcome to come visit us
Awesome.
anytime.
Definitely.
All right, great.
Definitely.
Well,
Thank you
thanks a
so
lot.
much, Mike. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thanks. Take care.